There are huge benefits between discovering a new culture that you have not grown up with your whole life and taking those parts that are actually helpful and then applying it to your own life. What do I mean by that? When I was traveling in Europe, specifically Ukraine, because out of all the countries that I went to, Ukraine would have to be probably the one of the dream venture destinations that I feel like most people should strive to go to. While there's not a war going on in it, of course. Of course, wait until the war is over, and then maybe you should try your hand at traveling in Ukraine. But there's a saying that goes, Tiki Shayidish, Bule Dush, Bude. I'm already messing this up. I'll put it on the screen for you. But it basically means the quieter you go, the further you go. What does this mean exactly? This saying probably holds a lot more weight the older you get. As a kid growing up, when you see these successful people, you see them being loud with their ambition, being very show-offy. And that's definitely a big trait that a lot of Americans hold. Once you have your success, the first thing you want to do is show it off to the world. Once you got the bling chains, you get the ice on your wrist, you want to show it out. But the more that I've been on my own grind, and the longer that I've been grinding for my own goals and paving my own path of success, I've found that the quieter I got about my ambitions, the more I stuck my head down and grinded for my goals, the more success that I started to find and that I'm starting to find. I always feel like, or before I always felt like, why am I not posting more often on social media? Why don't, if I really want to be successful, why am I not constantly posting on Instagram, constantly always on Facebook, on social medias, telling people what I'm doing at all times of the day? And to be fair, there was a time where I was doing that, especially during the pandemic, during the TikTok popularity growing. I was constantly posting, and I was getting a lot of engagement on the posts that I was getting. And despite having all that engagement and being as loud as possible, I wasn't really building up towards anything. I didn't really have a direction that I wanted that account to go to. I had no direction. And despite being very loud with my goals and being loud with my intentions of trying to get success, the directionlessness of it all kind of just made it a whole waste. Now, I'm not saying that I completely wasted my time. I learned a lot about social media. I learned how to engage and things like that. But I found that the better path that I went with, when I became more quiet and was more intentional about where I was grinding towards, I started finding the right people, the right networks of people to actually help propel me to my goals even faster. And I think that's the one thing that most colleges don't really, they leave certain details out about when they're teaching you lessons, and they sort of leave you kind of stranded with the path that you take either after high school or after college if you weren't exactly taking the right steps, outreaching to your professors and outright asking them, what do I do? If you're not intentional about life like that, they don't really tell you these things. So that's what I'm here for. This is why you're watching this video. And this is why I am a high proponent or a high advocate of being quiet, but still grinding, quiet success. This is gonna sound a little cheesy. You probably hear this buzzword or buzz phrase thrown out a lot, but there's a thing called quiet luxury now. I love quiet luxury, luxury that isn't loud, isn't prideful. You can be proud of your own work, but there's a certain class class of way of doing that, you know. If you want to reach a certain class in your own life, you know, you gotta be classy. But when you're quiet with your direction and goals, you have more time to actually think about each step that you're taking, you know. And especially, I saw this. There are like certain like qualities and certain like attributes that you see in America that as countries in Europe become more westernized, you see those attributes in those people of that country. And I especially saw this more so in Germany, and for a big reason too, because like Germany is like probably one of the more westernized country of Europe, if not the most westernized. So yeah, you're gonna see a lot of American influence in a country like that. So when I was in Germany, I was seeing, you know, these qualities of America where like, especially in the Turkish people of Germany, they were wearing these like flashy gold chains, and they were like usually the clerk of the watch stores or like the delis. I don't know, even think you call them delis in Germany. New York has delis, but you know, the corner stores, you know, the convenience stores. That's what you call them. The people who are running the convenience stores were usually the ones that were the most flashy. But if you look this up, I think one of the countries that starts with SW, I'm pretty sure it's Sweden, but it could be Switzerland. I have to look it up. One of those countries I was looking into. I need to look more into it because I wanted to visit that country, because they completely have a culture that I would aspire to want to assimilate to. But by looking at it, you would not be able to tell that most of the individuals, or at least a large percentage of those individuals, are highly successful in their finances and very, very, you know, rich and wealthy, but they don't show it off. You know, you wouldn't be able to tell by just looking at it. You'd have to actually look at some Census Bureau statistics. But you know, a lot of those people, they're very, very well off, and that is definitely a big, you know, representative of the saying, you know, the Ukrainian saying, the quieter you go, the further you go. And I especially love this saying for the introverts of this life that want to achieve success, because that is definitely a saying that I feel like would be helpful for them. You know, when they see all the people in the world, they're as loud as possible. You know, the most vocal people you see the most. And when you see them being successful, then, you know, it kind of like makes you feel like, oh, well, I'm probably never going to achieve success because I'm probably not as loud as those individuals. But that's completely not the case at all. You know, I do believe there's a certain balance that you have to strike with how vocal you are, with, you know, how successful that you want to be. You do have to speak up a little bit. And that is definitely something that you could get from traveling in Europe, because that really brought those traits out in me, you know, which, you know, spawned from my days in acting class. You know, you sort of have to be outgoing in an acting class. But you could demonstrate those traits while you're traveling too, because no one's going to remember you for the most part. You may meet some individuals that, you know, will remember you if you go back to that country, because, you know, not many Americans travel. So you probably get a lot more recognition traveling as an American. But the more I think about that saying, you know, when you see people be louder on social media, they do have more of a chance to be recognized by an American audience. So I guess, you know, if you want to be loud, you definitely will probably be good attracting American audiences. Like I saw this Ukrainian social media guy who had a big American audience, and he was acting very non-Ukrainian, let's say, which is very funny. Like most of the time when I was traveling in Ukraine, I didn't see people that were as, like, you know, street performery street performery, acting as a street performer in Ukraine as much as you would probably see in New York, because street performers, you see them everywhere, like on trains, in subway stations, on the streets, everywhere. Which it's not odd for me to usually see that, but when you're traveling around, when you're in Ukraine, it's a lot rarer of an occurrence. It's probably more rare because there's a war going on there. When I was in Germany, I did see a few street performers. But I think the biggest takeaway for the people who are viewing this far in the video, and if you made it this far, please leave a comment letting me know. Do you agree with that phrase? Do you agree that the quieter you've gotten and the more intentional with your actions you've gotten, the farther you've gotten closer towards your goals? Let me know in the comments. And if you leave a comment about that, I'll know you made it this far in the video. And also leave a like if you want to. But yeah, there's not one way of going about grinding in this life. There's not one singular path that you have to go to make it successful in life. And yeah, I think that's a good message for people to take away. Be more open-minded with the thoughts that you have in your life. And yeah, I think that's it for this video. If you like this content in this video, leave a subscription, and I hope you guys have a good day.